Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
If everyone would please rise for the pledge led by Commissioner Hardy.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible.
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move right into it. New business, item A. This is a report update on the Lake Worth Beach School District of Palm Beach County and the Wi-Fi project brought forward by myself and the Vice Mayor. And we've got wonderful guests here today. Hello, who'll be presenting?
Me. Hi,
Ms.
everyone.
Whitfield. Hello there, how are you?
It is so good to see everybody. Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we're very, very grateful that you guys can spend the time with us. Thank you.
Well, let me start by saying some of the people that are here with me who are going to be helping me with this project. We have some amazing staff members from both the county, the city, and from the school district who are here to help. So we have Adam Miller is actually going to be running the presentation. He's from the school district, so thank you, Adam. We have Mark Howard who will be here to answer questions from the school district. And then we have Michael Butler from the county who's actually spearheaded all this work from the county, and we're just eternally grateful to him. And then obviously Jess Savage has been just our rock for making this happen. So thank you so much, Jess, from the city. So I want to go through a little bit of this presentation, and obviously if you guys have any questions at all, I'm here, and then all the staff members are here to make sure that everybody really understands what's happening. So we can go on to the next slide.
Thank you.
So just real quick about the school district, we always like to share our vision and our mission because it really is core and central to everything that we do. So we are envisioning a dynamic and collaborative multicultural community where education and lifelong learning are valued and supported, and all learners reach their highest potential to succeed in the global economy. Our school district is committed to providing a world-class education with excellence and equity to empower each student to reach his or her highest potential. And that's actually really ties very well into what we're trying to do tonight. With the most effective staff to foster the knowledge, skills, and ethics required for responsible citizenship and productive careers. Next slide. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what happened recently. So when COVID started, on March 13th was our last day of school. And it was pretty traumatic. I actually talked to my daughter at like 1 o'clock, and I was like, "Are you okay? Are you ready?" She hadn't heard yet. So I was texting her and telling her, you know, school's done. This is your last minute. So say bye to your friends. And ever since then, we have been not in the normal school setting. During that time, we had spring break, which was awesome because it gave our staff a real solid chance to kind of prepare for what distance learning was going to look like. And some people were better suited than others. So what we were able to do is we were able to give out computers to a lot of people. We did a technology survey in those weeks, and we asked, do you have internet? Do you have access to the internet? Do you have a computer or a device of any kind? And for the people who said no, we were actually able to pass out computers. I think we had about 85,000 kids say that they did not have a device, and we passed out 68,000 laptops to these kids throughout the county. Some families had more than one kid that had no laptop, and we tried to accommodate where we could, but we were able to give out 68,000, and they still have them right now. Very few children, unless they moved out of area, actually returned them, but they still have them all summer long. The survey that we did, and also the data that we got, because we looked every day to see if kids were signing in. If they weren't signing in, our teachers called them and asked, and actually spent a lot of time talking to the families in the South Grade area and Barton area, because they were really struggling when they weren't able to reach their teachers. And so the teachers would actually drive by their house and stand outside and yell and say, "Hey, we've been trying to reach you, and can you get a phone number so we can talk to you?" So what we did is we collected all that data, and we realized that there's some places in our community just do not have access to Wi-Fi. They also, we created a couple of different ways for people to get Wi-Fi. And one of those things that we did was we AT&T to create these internet solutions so that people could sign up and get free internet. But I have to tell you, some of our communities, especially here in Lake Worth, do not want to put their name on anything. They don't want anyone to know where they are. And so, and you guys know that better than even I do. And so, you know, they're not willing to sign up. So we have to be more creative than that. So the project that we're bringing to you today is really a solution for this. The challenge is really to create equity within our schools. Our goal is to give every child an education. Doesn't matter who their parents are or where they're from. And it's been difficult in some of our communities, specifically here in Lake Worth. So our solution that we bring to you tonight is a way for us to collaborate with public and private partners to identify a series of solutions, lots of different ways that we can do this, but one really in particular that's going to help make sure that every child has access to the internet in their home. Next slide. So many of you guys know all these different organizations that have come together to do this, and some of the reasons why we want to do this. We want our families to be connected for education, and that's why I come to you tonight, but there's so many other reasons why our families need to be connected. Telemedicine has really come forward as a very important thing during this COVID crisis. I personally have had to be on calls with my doctor when I had COVID. And so you couldn't go in, you couldn't see anyone, but you still need care. So that's one thing that's wonderful about this. Mental and behavioral health services, employment opportunities, access to news, community engagement, and then, so many things that people need to do online now with our government and nonprofit services and financial services. So there's so many good things about being able to get online for all our families. Next slide. This is a Pew Research study that came out in 2019. It just shows you that people who don't have as much money are less likely to have internet in their home. They're less likely to have a smartphone, a desktop, a laptop, a tablet computer, or all of the above. We're really fortunate when you do have access and when you have access to a computer, but a lot of our families are just using phones to get on the internet, if anything at all. So that's one thing that they're doing. And as you know, in Lake Worth, we have quite a few people that are in that first category, making under less than $30,000 a year. Next slide. Okay, so back to the data. This is really important. So if you look here, we pulled up the schools here in Lake Worth, and you can see the number of kids who said that they have no internet at home. Barton Elementary came in at the highest, with almost 40% of those students have no internet to go to at all. So when we're trying to do an education service with them, it's very difficult because they have no way to get on the internet. A lot of those families, the teachers would have tried to teach them over the phone if they had a phone. And then I even had some families at South Grade that the teachers worked with the Farm Worker Council, and they copied packets for them. It was the best we could do. And I got to tell you, these kids are not learning at the rate other children are learning. And right now, we're not sure what school's going to look like when we go back, but we need these kids to be able to at least have the same access as their peers. So Highland Elementary was next, 34%, South Grade 33.9, Lake Worth Middle 31.5, North Grade came in at 24.8, and Lake Worth High 23.4. So those are the children that do not have access at home. And as you can see, it's really quite high here in Lake Worth. Next slide. So here's the plan that we bring to you. So we have history that this has actually been something that we can do and that has worked. It happened in West Palm Beach and Delray a few years back, I think 10 years ago. And they actually did it so that they created this whole infrastructure around the internet. So we are actually in the process of updating all of that with the project that we're doing now. They used Palm Beach County Fiber, and they actually worked with the FPL poles. And then they have to have a device in their home that actually boosts the signal strength. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But because they had that in place, they were able to help with education services like we're talking about here, but also they were able to help with life and safety resources like our fire department and our ambulances, they're actually able to connect, and our police are actually able to connect on these same Wi-Fi. So if they are out there, they can actually have a faster connection because they're able to use this. So it's another benefit that we can have. So the project that we're bringing you today is the Palm Beach County Digital Inclusion. We received money from the CARES funds, which is federally funded, as you know, and we got 261 million to the county. Of that, they've dedicated 10 million to this project, which is huge. This is such a great opportunity. I say it's going to be the best thing that comes out of COVID is this situation. So what our plan is with that 10 million is to build out the infrastructure and coverage areas that we prioritize, specifically by looking at the heat maps. We'll show you a heat map in a minute, but the heat maps that show you where the lack of access really is because of all the data that we have now. So we're going to do that. We absolutely have to spend this money by December 30th of this year. So I'm going to reemphasize that again in a little bit. We only have a really short amount of time to do it. And Lake Worth is in a really awesome position. Nobody ever says this because we have our own electric, we have our own poles. This is a huge thing. So we actually have the ability to put these on our poles without having to deal with creating an agreement with FP&L or any of that. So it's actually a really great situation to be in right now. And so there's some costs that go along with this. Now, let me make sure I have my costs. I want to tell you guys right. Okay, so they did the data for Lake Worth. We need 225 radios. Each radio takes about 17 kilowatt hours a month. So they think that should cost the city in just electric, it should cost around $5,400 a year. So that would be your ongoing costs. But the costs for putting everything in is about $200,000. And this is the opportunity that we have right now is to get from that 10 million, the funding to do all of this work to buy the radios and then 600,000 in a fiber build out. So we're talking an $800,000 value if the city of Lake Worth is willing to absorb the $5,000 in cost from the electric that would be taken up by these radios. So you can see the benefit to the city is just massive. As I mentioned before, each student would have to have a $50 Wi-Fi extender. The plan is that we would check them out to the students the same way we do with the computers. So as you know, we had all these computers, 68,000 we've given out so far. We did it through the schools. We would actually fundraise, get the money for the Wi-Fi extender, and find the student that doesn't have Wi-Fi. We'd give them the computer and the Wi-Fi extender so that they would have the ability to have a good, strong signal in their home. Because if we didn't do that, they wouldn't be able to have that. So that's the cost that we're looking at right now. Okay, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So as we said, there's lots of partners involved in this. The school district, we're trying to coordinate all this, but Palm Beach County's done the bulk of the work really, especially Mr. Michael is the one who's been the one doing it the most. And then public and private partners, we've actually reached out to quite a few different people, the BDB, the Economic Council to work on the infrastructure, and then different community groups along the way. The radio's normal replacement cycle would be about 8 to 10 years till we have to do it again. And the county would actually plan for that in their infrastructure planning. So just like you guys do when you create your plans for going forward, when you put something in, they would do that as well. So that wouldn't be something you'd have to think about later. There is no component written in this plan for salary or labor costs. So the county would absorb that into their normal everyday jobs. But they did say that if your utility workers were interested in being of assistance and helping them, they would obviously accept that. It's not a requirement for the program, but they wanted to make sure that you knew if the utility workers were able to help put the radios up, things like that, they would really love that. Oh, and I did want to mention that the ones in Pleasant City, because that's where one of the first projects were, those radios have been up for 12 years and they're still going. So that's been a really good thing. Okay, next slide. So here's like the roles of each person, of each group. So the school district's connecting, identifying the students, establishing the priority zones, which I'll show you in a second, provide the devices, train the families, communication, community engagement. We'll also deal with some issues if the students are having a hard time with it, we can help them with that. Palm Beach County has the CARES budget, which is amazing that they've already set that aside, which is awesome. And then engineering and technical setup. The municipalities, again, we'll have to have the interlocal agreements, the sustainability, the budget for that $5,000, which actually they think might be less, but we're going to just say 5,000 so we don't mess you up. And then communication and services. The community organizations will also help with training, support services, funding, advocacy. And then you have your own utility, so it makes it part of the city work to do the support, access to infrastructure, and then obviously people like me working on the policies that go along with this. All right, next slide. So this is the whole plan. We're going to lay the fiber optic cable, then we're going to put those that fiber, and it's going to be connected to the root radios. Those are actually connected directly to the fiber optic cable. And then the root radios connect to the mesh radios, which are Wi-Fi. And then that creates a whole network over the city. And then those little $50 things, that's where it says Wi-Fi extenders to capture the Wi-Fi mesh signal. Those will be in the student's home. And then the children get to enjoy Wi-Fi in their home. Next slide. So this is when we start talking about those heat maps. I love these maps. Everybody loves these maps. So if you look, you can kind of see where Lake Worth resides in this county map. You can see there's some really struggling areas along the coast. Goes all the way up into Riviera Beach, down into Boynton area, and then a little bit west into like Green Acres, Palm Springs. And then you can see in the Glades, there's a pretty big hotspot in there as well. And then if we look at the next slide, you can see specific to Lake Worth. This is our little town. You can see in there kind of where the biggest struggle areas are. And it just, as you would expect, south of downtown, you know, kind of spans the whole city. These are the areas where we have a lot of children that are not, they are not having any internet access. And it goes along with the children that are also on free and reduced lunch. You know, it just ties right into everything that they're experiencing. Next slide. We actually put together the number of students here for you. So you can see in the heat map zone, these are specific to Lake Worth, these numbers. So in that extreme density, we're talking 5,000 students that don't have any internet. Then there's a high density area, which has 453 students, medium density, which is 82. So you can see over 5,700 kids are affected by this in the city of Lake Worth, which makes it a really big priority area for us. When we think about how many students we can really impact with a very small amount of effort. And next slide. So once again, $800,000 value and $5,000 in cost for the city of Lake Worth to be a part of this. So that's, and we have to spend it by December 2020. One of the reasons that I have been pushing this so hard is because this is something that, as you guys know, the city of Lake Worth already did. A few years ago, they made an effort. You guys all made an effort. We all did. And then it never actually finished. The progress didn't finish, unfortunately. But because of that, you already have a lot of the layers in place to do the work. And it's so important for this community. And there's only so much money, right? So really, if it's that much money, we can only get maybe the first 10 communities to get involved in this or less, depending on how much money that they have to plan at the county. So I don't want the city to miss out on this chance. So I have been pushing as hard as I can to make sure that we do this. So I really appreciate you guys being so timely, and Ms. Savage making sure that we got onto this agenda to talk to you, because I think this is something that we need your input, and we need you to decide if this is something the city should do. Because if you do, we can move pretty quickly on that.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm in. I'm sure you all feel the same. We've been working on this, Erica. Thank you so very much. We've been working on this an awful long time. So this is, I'm so happy to see you here right now. Vice Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up first. You got to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
All right, Erica, very good to see you. And you look very happy. Everything's going good with the family, and that's really cool. Thank you.
We had a long run, but we're doing much better now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for recognizing the previous efforts and good intentions that the city of Lake Worth has had with respect to trying to find a means to provide internet for all of our children. A couple of just minor questions, I guess, and the first one is this. You know, the $50 booster fee, if you will, you mentioned a fundraising effort for that. So how many children would be impacted by that? Just the numbers that you show here that don't have access, or would this be all the children, or and how do you intend to fundraise for that? Or am I missing something?
No, I think you're right on board with that. We do need to fundraise for it. Let me ask the staff if anybody has a better answer than I would give, but I think it's BDB and Economic Council has been reached out to. There's been some fundraising organizations. Anybody have anything better that they can say about that?
What I'm sorry, Erica, not to interrupt, whether they're thinking, what would be the number? Do you know what the dollar value would be to make this a reality?
For us to be able to fundraise for all of those kids?
Yeah, how many $50 units do we need altogether?
So we had 5,000 kids that didn't have internet, so we could do the math on that. 5,000 times.
285,000.
How much is it?
$285,000.
$1,000.
Mr. Miller, do you want to answer that question a little better?
Sure. That last slide there showed all the students that could be potentially impacted. Some students do have internet, so we can definitely get you a number from our parent survey. We probably want to update that as part of this project to make sure those students that would receive the Wi-Fi extender are the ones that need it, that don't already have it.
I thank you. All right, thank you. The next question I have is, what's the speed of the internet access that's going to be available to these children?
Mr. Butler?
Planning on it being 100 meg download speed and 25 meg uploads. It could go higher than that, but the minimum will be about 100 down, 25 up.
Okay, so for a layperson like me who doesn't even barely use a smartphone, how fast is that? Is that really fast? Is that just slow? Is it basic? Where do we fall on that?
It would be in today's the opportunities that Comcast or AT&T would give you if they were coming into your home. It would be on the upper end of basic.
Upper end of basic, okay. And I understood that there would only be access to a couple of different networks, and if that's being the case, I guess that would be more than enough power to get them what they need.
Yeah, the capacity on the backhaul networks, or as Erica mentioned, the route radios, that fiber network is running at multi-gigabit speeds, which is very, very high speed.
I see.
We have plenty of capacity.
Gotcha. Now let's talk about timing. Here it is, middle of June, and how long will it take for the school district to get all this equipment in? Number one, do you happen to know what that answer is?
From the county's perspective on the infrastructure side, we've already started ordering and receiving the radios.
Okay.
And the fiber construction permitting process has already started for Barton Elementary and for Highland Elementary. We're still working out some of the route details for South Grade and North Grade. We already have fiber into Lake Worth High School. So we're planning on having fiber construction complete by the end of July, mid-August is the goal.
Okay.
And then we would start the radio installation.
Nice. And how long would it take to install the radios?
It depends on how many bodies I have available. We're going to be working in several areas of the county with that heat map that Erica showed you. So we're going to try and accomplish it as quickly as we can.
Okay. And you won't require interlocal agreements for each individual school, will you?
No, we already have an interlocal agreement with the school district for all that back end work.
Right.
The interlocal agreements that were mentioned in this are for the roles and basically to outline the roles and responsibilities of all of the players.
Okay. This is questions for the city manager. I guess there'll be some permitting or whatever on our end. Yes? No?
Yes.
Yeah, they'll be depending upon the routes and how they determine we're going to do this. There'll be some associated permitting probably. There'll also be, and I can talk about this if you want to go into a little more about the pole connection fees that we charge private sector. And I'm imagining that's something y'all want to have a policy conversation to direct us that it would be an in-kind contribution. We charge private sector to attach to our poles $1,300 to do so. So that's obviously would be a direction from y'all to staff to consider doing that as an in-kind. And I'm sure the school district and the county would recognize that significant contribution towards the effort. It could be in $100,000, $200,000 potentially.
Okay. And Eric, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Timing. Yes, the money needs to be spent by the 30th. Does that mean everything has to be installed, or does that just mean there has to be a purchase order in place?
Yeah, the capital expenditures for the CARES funding have to be invoiced and paid by that time. So like I said, we've already started ordering all the equipment that the county's going to be using. The biggest constraint on us is all the fiber construction that we're going to have to do throughout the county. And that's why we've already started in Belglade, and like I said, starting in the Barton and
Right.
Highland as well.
Thank you. City Manager, question for you. Question for you. How much time does the city need to approve the permits and get everything done to make this a go?
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor Pro Tem, we shouldn't be a holdup in any of that. Honestly, this is fairly routine kinds of activities, laying the fiber. And as far as the only complication we see right now is we don't own all the poles that may be required in the fleet. And when you get into dealing with AT&T, it gets a little more complicated there, but we'll be happy to do what we can to try to advocate to make sure that those units get on those poles as best as possible. But our experiences in the past dealing with some of that. So
Right.
We shouldn't be the holdup on this.
All right, and one last question, Erica. This is slightly off point, but I think I need to ask the question. That is, with so many laptops being given out, okay, at no cost, I'm assuming there's no deposits or anything required for these. No. So what happens, for the ones that don't find their way back? Yeah, I mean,
So they actually track them, believe it or not. They have a tracking device in them, and they do track them.
I mean, obviously, there's going to be a cost associated with replacing those as we go forward.
Yeah, it's not great. I got to say, in the beginning, we were really worried about even giving them out because we thought, this is like we're taking them from our schools to hand them out to people. So this is definitely a concern. We have a lot of really strange budget concerns right now. We just spent $500,000 on masks for all our employees when they come back. So there's some strains on the budget coming up for sure. But yeah, it's an issue.
Okay, so okay, I guess we as a municipality can cover that when it comes back to us again. If there's a need for money sometime down the road. So, well, thank you very much again for the presentation. This is really exciting. Actually, I'm going to sleep a lot better tonight knowing that all of our children are going to have an equal opportunity, if you will, going forward to have access to the internet and the technology they need to do their studies. So thank you again for the presentation.
They won't be able to do the dog ate my laptop.
Exactly.
Used to be able to laptops are the new paper. Vice Mayor, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Of course, it's a big yes from me, Erica. With the CRA, we've been working on things like this for over 10 years. I thank you and Adam and Michael and Mark for, stepping up and seeing the value here. And again, Jess Savage, Representative David Silvers, for finally pulling the group together and doing what we need to do. So thank you. Couple questions. So you had mentioned that we gave out 68,000 computers, but we really had a need for about 85. Does that mean there's still a shortage? And what are we doing for that?
There is a shortage if you wanted every child to have one, and we do have some we're still working through if they need it. We are helping to have that happen, but we've mostly covered all the kids. Do you guys have a better answer? Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Right, so we did our best to communicate to as many families as we could to say, hey, if you need a device, please let us know. We're still giving out devices today. If some are damaged or some are just coming forward finally that they do need them. We were trying to do our best to give as many out as we could.
So if we come across children that are in need, we still are able to give some out?
Yes, they should go through the school. Through the school principal can request it. Yep, and we have a vendor that will work with the family to get them a device.
And then
Our education foundation's actually been actively raising money for that. They've been buying and giving out even more devices, which has been really nice.
And then what buy-in is AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, these companies, what kind of buy-in are they? Are they possibly going to participate in the $50 cost that we need? Has anybody reached out to them for that?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Adam.
Sure.
So thanks, good question. Comcast has been a partner in this from the following perspective. They offer an Internet Essentials program, which for families that can afford it, it's $10 a month to have an in-home internet connection. So as we kind of look at that heat map, we know that this 10 million won't cover every single student, but for us, it's like Erica said, a set of solutions. So in those densest areas where we provide the Wi-Fi, we've got the Business Development Board, the Economic Council, United Way, a bunch of funders there to help with some of that cost. And then we're looking at sponsorships for families. If a family can afford the $10 a month, that's fine. If the family, for one reason or another, can't afford the $10 a month from either Comcast or AT&T, then we're looking at sponsorship programs for those families from nonprofits or even for-profit companies.
Are we looking at sponsorship for that $280,000 for the actual boxes too? Or for instance, like on a national level, when we go to conference, Comcast will sponsor a $15,000 breakfast. Verizon will sponsor a $50,000 dinner, whatever it may be. Are we looking at any of those corporate sponsors to try to pick up that $280,000 cost?
Yeah, I can't say that I am personally, but we have, through the Economic Council and the Business Development Board, we're looking at both profit, nonprofit, public and private partners that want to engage in kind of helping to raise the money to equip each home.
Okay, because that's something physically we can't do as electeds, but you could do as, lay people.
Yeah, and the kinds of things that from a policy perspective is making sure that any family that's in a housing authority housing or something of that nature where there may be a subsidized situation has that access, and it's included at no cost. From a policy perspective, I think there are things that you guys can do with the leverage that you have either within the city or at the state level or the county level to make sure that every student has access.
Now, Erica, do you know or someone else know, like nonprofit organizations that house children, adopt a family, other people like that? Are there any extra grants or any other funding that they may have access to as a nonprofit to offset some of these costs in those areas?
Can't imagine. Adopt-A-Family's doing so much right now with their new housing. I can't imagine he has more money for it. But
I'm thinking there may be something in the CARES Act or something in a piece under COVID that they could tap in to pay for boxes or tap in for something else.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but it's definitely a concern. And I asked that question because I was like, we can't put this onto the families. There's no way they'd have $50. So it's going to be something that we find a way to provide to the students as a part of this. So we will have to fundraise for it. And, you know, they're working on it right now, which is good.
Yeah, might I also say that like in each community, you know, how you guys design and sustain the project. Certainly the school district is going to be there as an educational partner, right? But any of the other partners or services that you bring in I think we encourage that kind of innovation and creativity through interlocal agreements or other things to provide, you know, any kind of service that you can imagine. I think this gives us the opportunity to kind of design and build those things that it might be very different in Lake Worth than it is in Delray or Boynton or some other community.
Happy to reach out to those people too and see if they had you know, any kind of extra funding that came from this COVID crisis. Maybe they would be willing to. I think it's a good idea.
And city manager, I don't know legally what we can do, or as we have new development coming on board that may have new children moving into our district, you know, talk to some of these developers about, you know, a separate fund to, you know, if they've got 50 children coming in, you know, 50 boxes, funding 50 boxes. There's our attorney. I don't know if that's something that we can do or not, but
To the attorney.
If we have new development coming,
Materializes the second anything. She's like, bing, 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 bing,
Popped
bing.
on.
thank you. But if we have new development coming in that is going to house children, I don't know what we could do, or a suggestion, or, you know, have some kind of a program where they can, you know, buy into it to actually put that funding aside for new children coming online.
Well, I think it's a thing to discuss with the school board, because Erica can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is an initiative where the school board would like to start getting impact fees to help cover school costs related to development. It could be something that the city agrees to something like that, where right now it's sort of voluntary, left up to the developer whether or not they want to pay that impact fee. But I think, Vice Mayor, you bring up a good issue. Perhaps there could be an interlocal between the city and the school board, where if we were to require that type of an impact fee, that the school board would agree that the money would go towards like a Wi-Fi citywide system or something, or a sustainable system.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, Erica, you had mentioned other cities in the area. What's some of the other cities? Is Green Acres coming on board? What are some of the other cities you're talking to about this project?
So we have conversations going on right now. I sent an email to like kind of my corridor cities. I know we have the Glades, we have West Palm is having some conversations, right? Delray is definitely going to be redoing theirs, and Boynton and Lantana, they expressed a little bit of interest, but I don't know if we're working with them yet.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Next in line is the city manager. Did you have your hand up to speak about something else, city manager, or did you answer it earlier?
Actually, I talked about it earlier, but I did want to clarify when I said that there was a fee. That's not a one-time pole connection fee. That's an annual lease. So in the recognizing of the policy discussion about what we would be bringing to the table from the electric utility side, we need to make sure that that kind of is understood, that the city is foregoing some fees and charges related to that.
We will be putting the main ones on our schools as well.
And the secondary question was, I just wanted to make sure we had clarification, because I know I have a lot of electric utility staff on the line. There's always the concern that somehow this equipment, the expectation of maintaining it and calibrating it and all those things would somehow fall to the staff. I didn't understand that to be the case. If y'all want to clarify.
Yeah, that would be the
contractors. I'm sorry.
That would be the county's responsibility.
Okay, and that's the answer that I thought I understood. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood. Oh, my light just went out. That we wouldn't be taking on any of that responsibility. That's well out of our wheelhouse. We move the electrons around in the system. We don't do electronic transmission equipment. So good. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, Erica and your staff there, really, thank you. You got to know how important, next to health, education is the solution, the biggest part of our, should be biggest part of our lives. So I look forward to more education in Lake Worth. Numbers are going around at 261 million. I'm not, you saying that 10 million is only going to education in the county? Can't hear you.
10 million is, yeah, 10 million was allocated specifically for this project from the
Just
CARES
this project.
funding.
Okay, well, do you have a ballpark on how much out of 261 more there's going to education out of the,
I
in
do-
addition to the 10 million for this project?
I don't know if any of the other money is going, is it? I think, I mean, there's some going to food, because I've had those conversations, so quite a bit for that. What else is it being used
I
for?
think there was about 50 million for food. There was I want to say 60 million for business recovery grants,
Small business.
the rent protection. I'm not sure of all the other areas.
Mike, the testing sites?
The testing sites, so the county has a portion of that that's helping to, we've expended quite a bit of money and time putting up all the testing sites and other COVID related expenses for the county. And I know there was a small piece of that 261 million that was covering county expenses and emergency operations expenses, but that was a small slice of it.
So that's all coming under education heading. So, okay.
No, all of those are just county services that they're doing. When we asked for funding, this is what we pushed, because we realized that this was a big struggle for education. So we asked the county for this. And
Well, I'm a little puzzled at the proportion of 10 million for education. Is there anything else that, to really focus on teaching children?
So there is federal funding that's coming through the state for education. That's a different set of funding. So through COVID, they actually did give some funding to the state, and the state is then passing it down to us. I think right now it's 3 million for the summer school that they just decided that they're willing to give us, 3 or 4 million. And I think after we give it to private schools and charter schools, it'll be like 2.9 that actually comes to the public schools. So that's coming from the state specifically for us to provide summer school. We're not even sure we're going to have the ability to use it because it's so late in the summer already. So that's one piece of the funding. And then I think that they're working on additional funds for the fall that I'm not really sure. So there is other pots that are coming down, but they would come through the state because that's really where we get our funds from. We don't get them.
I guess you know what I'm indicating is that I just think that out of 261, I want education to be more of a priority than what it looks like in numbers.
We'll be happy they put so much for food because that really helps our children.
Yes, all day long, all year long. The other thing is we're talking about money in terms of Wi-Fi covering the city. I don't know how 285,000 compares to just covering the city. Ed or somebody technically can tell me how that would compare to a Wi-Fi connection throughout the city. Because I have no idea about numbers of the cost of Wi-Fi.
I think the 285 was only the calculation of the pole attachment fees that the city would be contributing as an in-kind.
No, that was the bump up, I think, from your connection to the homes.
Oh, for the extenders, that's correct.
Extenders. And then now we're talking contributing 100,000 in
kind.
Mike, can you help me out here where that's coming?
Madam Mayor, Commissioner Robinson, that was fees that we charge private sector companies for pole attachment agreements on an annualized basis. I was saying that I thought that y'all would consider waiving those in some capacity as an in-kind contribution.
Are we going to be, the other pole connections from everywhere else that you're going to be doing this? Are we going to be competitive in pole connection collection? Because we're not the wealthiest of cities in the county, and now we're contributing. I don't mind asking for more money for anything we can collect from. I'm sorry, not to be.
So Commissioner, I think what you're asking is, will FP&L be giving this as in kind as well? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'd love to be compared to FP&L in terms of their budget, but I would hope that the people negotiating this understand that our in-kind has to come from somewhere. And I just hate to say that that we want to contribute as much as we can to education. Finish business. Okay, thank you.
If I can clarify a little bit of that, Commissioner, basically
Yeah,
when we're looking in these areas, we're looking for whatever vertical resources or assets we can find to attach these radios to, whether they're county facilities, school district facilities, municipal facilities, or in some areas FP&L and or AT&T facilities. We're trying to minimize the ongoing operational expenses for
I can appreciate
any
that.
participant,
So are we.
including the cities. You know, so Lake Worth has the advantage that you have a very robust infrastructure in terms of vertical assets, the poles specifically. So that's a benefit to this project.
Yeah,
Great.
we're giving the ability to use our polls because
Yeah.
they're giving us this whole big program. $800,000 worth of infrastructure for the kids. Yeah. I'll take that payoff all the time. All right, who's next? Let me see. Commissioner, oh, I'm sorry, do you still have more? You're breaking, hold on. Commissioner
Wait.
Robinson, I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
I didn't get quite a relationship of the connector, the extenders to covering the city in Wi-Fi connections. I don't know how that works, but are we talking how many millions or how many hundreds of thousands?
Are you asking about how much it would cost if each family was just given Wi-Fi in their home versus doing this as a mesh network? Is that the question?
Or have the ability. I don't even know that they have the ability throughout the city to connect to Wi-Fi.
Some places don't at all. It's actually been one of the struggles that we've had when we offered this Comcast connection. Comcast has to be in the neighborhood in order for them to do that. And so if they don't actually have the cables there, they weren't able to connect. But I'm sure somebody who knows better can answer this better than I can.
I think I just maybe provide a little clarification, Commissioner Robinson. It's not our intention to compete with Comcast. What we're trying to do is connect our students for educational purposes, and then if the city decides, maybe provide other opportunities for life and safety and so forth. The Wi-Fi extenders is a one-time cost. The $50 connects a family in a home to the Wi-Fi for as long as the family lives in that home or uses that device, right? If a kid is graduating or leaving the area, they could hand it back to the school. It would be assigned to a different student. Of course, there would be some new kids coming into the city each year. And I think that's where the district is committed to making sure that that cost is covered and not a burden on the city through all kinds of fundraising mechanisms. That our commitment is to making sure that the student has access to a device and there's reliable internet access in the home for each of our students through this one-time $50 fee. So I'm not sure if that provides clarity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardy.
Thank you. Hi there. First of all, thank y'all, all y'all for the work that y'all do in the community on the behalf of our kids, all of our kids across Palm Beach County, and especially for those in Lake Worth Beach. My first question pertains to the survey. I know that the survey, which was about internet connectivity, was originally like a kind of Google form, which you needed the internet to access, and which created a problem, but that later on that there was some text messaging to parents to try to get them, but still in Lake Worth Beach, there were significant numbers, if I did this right, of students for whom we had no information. So just going down the line here, you know, Barton, about 23% of their students, we didn't have a response for, according to the presentation, about 25% of Highland, 68% of South grades, no response. And North grade only 1%, which was about 8 students, which was great. And I think it kind of reflects the socioeconomics of the schools. And so I'm wondering what outreach, and I know you touched on it with teachers calling students, you know, and their families, assuming that the contact information and address information was updated, which I know was, you know, an issue. But what additional outreach was done to touch these students, to talk with them, to assess their situation, and what documentation exists about this outreach, if any?
So Mr. Howard actually created this amazing dashboard that I was floored with, or maybe Mr. Howard's office, probably other people, maybe Mr. Miller was a part of that. But on this dashboard, you could actually see for specific zip codes,
Right.
how often students logged in on a day-to-day basis. Do you guys want to talk about that data a little bit? Mr. Howard, do you want to talk about it?
I'm sorry. Sure. I'd love to talk about it.
We'd love to hear about it.
So, yeah, we built, as Ms. Whitfield said, a comprehensive public-facing dashboard that for each student considers how frequently the student logged in through our district portal, whether or not the student has a district-issued device, and which applications that student is accessing. It's all aggregate data, so it's publicly available. So that's helpful, right? It helps us kind of determine what we consider to be engagement. How frequently is the student engaging? But one of the things, Commissioner Hardy, that we found is as we looked at closer at that data, we had a percentage of students who weren't connecting very frequently, right? Probably for a lot of the reasons that have been described here tonight, the either no access or limited access or poor access. We believe that the percentage of homes and students who don't have internet is higher than our survey reflects for the reasons you described. So a couple of things. At the feeding sites, we also provided the paper, the survey in paper form. But beyond that, what we did the last week and a half of the school year is we identified the students in each of our schools who we defined as having limited engagement. That means they were logging on less than 2 times a week to the portal. And that's a bare minimum, right? We provided the list of these students to each school and had them kind of complete a series of questions relying on the teacher's relationship and observation of that student to give us information, other information that they might know about the family, other barriers that might exist. And if they weren't logging onto the portal, whether that student was getting a packet or watching the lessons on TV, and whether the home environment was a barrier to learning. So we've collected that. We're sharing that internally with our principals and so forth. And that's another element that we think helps to shape what this might look like and answer some questions. I think when we come back in the fall, right, that's going to be our greatest opportunity to really have a more thorough engagement with our parents and students to really determine who still has unmet needs. So I don't think that we have all of the information we need. I think it's going to be an ongoing process.
Okay, thank you for that. Can we talk a little bit about we'll start with the upload download speed, or download upload speed rather. What is required of people who use the internet, or rather what's expected by people who use it, and what's required by the companies that are providing services, through the internet has changed over time. 10 years ago, we weren't doing some of the things on the internet that we're doing today, and we didn't need as many of the capabilities that we had today, or 12 years ago, for example, when the Pleasant City infrastructure was put in. And so, I'm wondering, to what extent do you think that the 100 megabit per second download and the 25 megabit per second upload, which isn't as necessary for the kids, to what extent do you think that's going to hold up over the useful life of the equipment?
It should, if anything, get better through software upgrades over time.
Okay. Okay.
Like I said, the equipment is actually rated at gigabit speeds.
Okay.
We're anticipating that 100 megs, once it's spread across multiple users and multiple radios, poor radio on the mesh should be the minimum.
Okay, cool. And I guess I'm wondering, like, how, because I recognize that sometimes people who have a product will say one thing about the product and its speed, and when you actually use it or try to use it when everybody else is using the stuff, you get a different story. So I'm wondering, to what extent has the school district or the county tested or verified that?
The county uses this equipment extensively. We've got our primary infrastructure is a different product line, but we do use this particular product line for what we call wireless backhauls between sites that are not easily attainable with normal wireline cabling. So for instance, where you have a 9-mile shot up to Pahokee from Belglade, that we're using this equipment. We've tested the equipment up into multi-gigabit speeds every day to fire stations and other things. So we're very familiar with the equipment. We've been maintaining this type of equipment for several years.
Okay, all right. And that doesn't change with many more individual households using the equipment?
It should be, from our perspective, that's one of the reasons the county is offering to continue to maintain this without worrying about additional need for funding or anything on the maintenance side, is because we can maintain most of it remotely, other than, say, physical damage such as a lightning strike. And we're comfortable that we can maintain this across that scale with not much of a problem.
Okay. And how long, like, what's the useful life of the signal boosters? Do they match the useful life of the, like the in-home devices useful life and the useful life of the, for lack of a better term, transmitters that are on these poles?
I would anticipate that they would probably have a useful life of at least 5 years.
Okay. So it may be that in 5 years we'll need to figure this out again, but just so that we have some foresight into what might be needed 5 years from now. So it'll be about 5 years maybe for each device.
That would be my expectation.
Okay. All right, cool. And that means that whoever's doing fundraising should never stop. I don't know who's listening to this, but whoever's doing fundraising, don't stop. And I guess, the last thing about how we're going to pay for that, which is on the fundraising side. And it's, Christy, it's my understanding that if you're going to have some sort of an impact fee, you would need some kind of a rational nexus. And this would be and we've had these discussions before, but this would be a very specific request, of a developer. I'm wondering, and we kind of discussed this before, I think it was a year and a half ago. I had this idea of using our sustainable bonus incentive program to finance educational expenditures on the part of the city, right? So if a developer wants, extra height or FAR, we require them typically to spend a certain amount of money per square foot, improving their project. And, some of the things that they spend money on to improve the project are, really cool. And I'm all for it. And some of the stuff is like, okay, we gave away extra height or density for some landscaping, right? And so, I'm wondering to what extent we can, to avoid having to go through the whole rational nexus with the impact fee thing, just give the developer an option to write us a check for a portion of the dollars he would have to spend improving his project. That'd be a viable way to finance this legally.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, please.
Yes, Commissioner Hardy, I think it's a really good idea to think about in terms of our sustainable bonus program and also our economic development incentives that we have of something where the developer could voluntarily agree to pay something in exchange for some benefit to their project. I'd have to work with William Waters on that and how we could maybe do that through the sustainable bonus program or an economic development incentive. Obviously, you've hit the nail on the head with the impact fee issue. And I think the easiest way, if it were to be some kind of impact fee, it would have to be an interlocal through the school board where they agreed to use the funds specifically for Wi-Fi. Otherwise, we'll have to get creative with our own code and how we could do that with developers.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I'm looking at the Wyndham Hotel Sustainable Bonus Improvement Program breakdown of what they said they would spend. So, it was on, changing what would have been aluminum rails to glass amounted to a $73,000 expenditure, right? Which was a part of the package of things that they did to improve their project to get the height and the FAR and all this stuff, right? So rather than having them, do that, maybe we can ask them to write a $73,000 check, right? And I think that would go a long way, to the city, or, to provide some benefit, what's the difference, $73,000 on my project or $73,000 to the city? Maybe you have them write half of a $73,000 check to kind of incentivize them to put cash in our hands that we can devote to this purpose or any other purpose with respect to education. I look forward to having that conversation with my colleagues, but given the amount of development activity that's happening in the city and that we hope to continue to see happening in the city, that might be an option.
Madam Mayor, if I may, just one thing we've got to be careful of is we can't start charging developers money to give them bonuses. There does need to be some nexus between our program and what they're paying for. If we can make an argument that somehow money's voluntarily paid into our Wi-Fi citywide system creates a sustainable bonus overall for the city, then I think we might be able to explore something like that. But we got to be careful, of crossing that line and just allowing folks to pay more money so that they can get additional density or something like that.
Sure. I look forward to looking into that. And I think those are my questions and comments for this. I obviously think it's very important for kids to have access to high-speed internet. It's, when I was a kid, it was not as necessary as it is today. Today, it's absolutely essential. And, whatever has to be done to get this implemented in the city and to get the booster devices to all the kids, I'm 100% for. Actually, one last question, and I'm not sure who here can answer it, but, maybe I'll put it this way. The eviction moratorium is expiring. I think it's July 2nd. The Florida Supreme Court said writs of possession are going to start July 1st. And, I'm wondering to what extent that might screw with our data on the folks who need this stuff and where they are. If there are lots of folks with a few months of back rent who are basically going to be evicted and who are going to move, that could throw a wrench into our plans. And so I hope that we kind of, as a city, keep an eye on that and try to do something to address it, because I think all these things are connected.
Okay, thank you. It's funny, Commissioner Hardy, you're saying the internet wasn't that strong back when you were in school. I think IT was called AV when I was in school. There was the guy wheeling in the projector, and there was no such thing as computers. And I'm not that old. That's just so not fair. Yeah, probably within the 5-year time span, we're going to have to be looking at a whole new technology, because technology moves so quickly. We'll be looking at installing something else, I'm sure, by that point. Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon, can you hear me?
Yes, Mayor, I just wanted to say Commissioner Maxwell asked if he could see the baby. So is it okay if I show her real quick?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Good.
I saw the baby before and I couldn't say anything because someone else was talking and I was oohing and eyeing. And speaking of Commissioner Maxwell, did you have your hand up? Did you have one more question?
No, I just want to see the baby first. Everybody wait. Hi there, sweetie pie. Oh, Sharon. Hi. She's
Commissioner
beautiful.
Maxwell, don't make that baby cry.
I didn't make her.
No, please pull the
Hey, Brent.
bottle.
Hey, Brent.
Do
How
that.
are you?
Thank you.
Oh, all right. Well, we just woke her up. Hey,
Aw.
one technical question. It just occurred to me. We were talking earlier. You mentioned Comcast Essential program for $10 for folks that can afford it, which begs the question in my mind. Again, I apologize. I'm not a technical geek here, but I assume then that this network that's being built is built in addition to the Comcast network to provide service specifically to folks who don't have Comcast. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is targeted to fill the gaps.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We're not in the business to compete with the private industry.
Understood. Yeah. Thank you again for your presentation.
Gotcha. And thank you all for your presentation. I'm so proud of everyone working together.
Thank you.
We have to stick together. We're all going through this, and I really appreciate you taking the extra care, noticing the difference of the types of needs we have and the difference of our infrastructure too, to create plans that address them. And we're very grateful for that. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate you guys so much. And
Oh,
if you need
us,
anything, let us
you, kiddo. And you take care of yourself and your family and your baby.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll talk to you guys soon.
And our best to everyone from the school district and from the county. Thank you again. Grateful. Thank you. All right, folks, if you guys want to sneak off the call. All right, here we go. We'll move on to our new business item B, resumption of disconnects for non-payment and implementation of utility bill payment plan. City manager, did you want to start? Or Ed, would you like to start?
Mike just gave me the go, so I'm going to go live.
Couldn't find my mute button there. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor and commissioners and Vice Mayor. So we have a presentation for tonight. You have a document in front of you with the skeleton of a motion that has some blanks in it for you to work out and give us a decision on tonight. So I do have a presentation I'm going to walk you through to give you the latest information on where we are with respect to our aging report and the accounts that are in arrears and subject to cut. This is where I put a separate hat on, and I'm not speaking just for the electric utility. I'm speaking for all of the city utilities because they're all on the same bill. So we don't just have a bill just for electric. We're talking about all of the bills. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the presentation and walk you through this.
Please do so. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, we should have that up now. Everybody should be able to see it. Okay. Okay, making sure I have all the slides up here. So everybody hear me okay?
Good.
Okay.
Yep, you're good, Ed.
All right, so this first slide is the tough one. This is done as of June 4th. And as of June 4th, it shows that we have 1,789 of our accounts that have crossed the line, if you will, in terms of required payment for cuts. So these are the folks that would be eligible for cut if we were to have resumed on June 4th. Now, what you might ask, well, why isn't that as of today? It's not as of today because it takes quite a bit of work just to put this list together in terms of understanding that all of the balances due, the deposits, how much is subject to cut, how much is just not subject to cut yet, but is late. It's a very manual process, requires days of work by staff. So this is as of June 4, and these numbers do move every single day. So it's not as easy as just saying, okay, we've got it and we nailed it and it's frozen in time. But roughly 87% of the 1,789 is residential and the other 13% is commercial. We have had partial payments that have been made, and that's shown there as $429,000 plus. So customers are making partial payments. But the total outstanding balance today for all city utilities, this is billed but not yet paid by these 1,789 customers, is $1.1 million. So the 1,789 customers are owe the city currently $1.1 million. Of that amount, $624,000 is what we consider to be a delinquent. And delinquent means that that's how much of it is due to the cut, if you will. But they've gone beyond that. And then we took an analysis here and we said, how much do we have in deposits? So what we're saying here is that of these total dollars, on these specific accounts, we have $722,000 in deposits. Of that, 407 of those accounts have no deposits at all with us. And then if they were to stop paying and we never heard from these customers again, it'd be 975 of those accounts would still have a balance with us if they left completely without paying anything. 602 would be okay with the balances. Up in the middle right, I know one of the commissioners, at least Commissioner Maxwell, wanted to know what the averages and the minimums and the maximums were at our last meeting. The average outstanding balance for a commercial account that's subject to cut would be $1,366. The average outstanding balance for a residential account that would be subject to cut would be $541. And then you see the minimums and the maximums shown there as well. So $6,600 is the largest of the 224 accounts that are commercial. The largest one is $6,634. And on the residential side, $3,600. And then you see their minimum down below as well, $191 and $95. So that gives you a snapshot, if you will, of what those accounts look like that are subject to cut. The aging report is a little bit different look at this, and this is as of June 16th. And what we're doing in the aging report is we're looking at accounts that are more than 30 days late and then accounts that are more than 60 days late. And we track those. So anybody who's 29 days late is not yet on this report. So that's why you say, why is this, in the bottom right-hand corner, you say $989,000. And you take that number and we go back a slide and you say, why isn't that the 1.1 million? And that's because this account, this aging report only looks at accounts that are more than 30 days late and then more than 60 days late. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that about 14.6% of the utility revenues are 30 plus, plus 30 days, plus 60 days late already. So those numbers are, of course, a concern to all of us. We reported at the last few meetings, and we've been doing this every month, that we did get very proactive. I'm not aware of any other municipality or investor-owned utility or municipal utility that has done this, but we made over 3,700 calls, over 3,700 calls were made by 2 staff members from our conservation group who were temporarily reassigned to do this. A fantastic effort on their part. That yielded 619 applications being submitted to the county for assistance with their utility bills. So it was quite an undertaking, and it did yield some results. Out of the 619 applications, 302 have been deemed by the county assistance group to be worthy of assistance and will be getting assistance. There's an additional 216 that are still under review as they're going through it. And then there's another group that's awaiting additional documentation to come in from the potential client. This is not countywide data. This is specific to the Lake Worth Beach utility customer base. Through this effort, the agency has forwarded to us what is referred to as commitment letters. We have the first commitment letters here, 55 customer commitment letters for a total of $21,000 and change. The 302 that you see above, you say, well, it says 55 at the bottom, but it says 302 up further above. The other commitment letters haven't gotten to us yet. It usually takes 3 to 4 weeks or so, I'm told, to actually get the commitment letters in hand. And by the way, as I'm talking through this, I do have a lifeline, which is Franco Bolito, our customer service manager, who is the person who did the vast majority of this work. So I just get to speak to it. He gets to be my lifeline, but he's on the phone here as well. One of the things that we also took a look at is how do we stack up relative to the other utilities? And we're going to show you the numbers for the municipal utilities and also the investor-owned utilities. So what we've shown here, based on data that we could gather from the internet, from these city websites, from news clippings, it's kind of hard to get it all into one place. And Franco's done a great job of, even calling some of these folks to find out what they're doing. But we've shown the start dates and the end dates. The end date being the date when they intend to resume service disconnections for non-payment. We are in this list on 3/17, and you can see that we're among the early adopters of the suspension. And then if of course we were to go with the date that's been put into the draft resolution for you to look at tonight, or draft motion, is to say that we would go as late as July 17th before we resume business as usual, if you will. So we're among the most generous. I'm only aware of 2 other utilities in the state that have dates that would go longer than us. The big question here is also what's happening around us. So as best as we can tell, the neighboring surrounding utility for electric, and of course they're not in the water business, they started their effort ceasing cessation of cuts on the 16th, March 16th, and they've advertised July 1 as the date when the process ends. We've submitted for your discussion a date of July 17th, which would give customers advance warning that this is coming. One of the things that's for discussion tonight is concept of repayment plans. These are the utilities that we could find that have talked about repayment plans and the various options that they put out there. So an easy way to look at it is if we just look at Green Cove Springs, they resumed cuts May 1. They do have a repayment plan, and it's a $100 one-time credit. If we look at some of the others, Lakeland will resume cuts, or has resumed cuts effective June 15th, and their customers will pay back the balances that they owe over a period of 6 months. And they're going to resume the late fees on October 1. FPL advertises a repayment plan, but we're unable to get the specific details of a repayment plan. They do indicate that they refer their customers to an agency. I'm looking for some of these that are more interesting. JEA is proposed a repayment plan of 9 months for their residential customers and 36 months for their commercial customers. But the assistance that they're offering to the customers is to go on a prepay plan. We currently do not have a prepay plan, but we will be bringing you a presentation on prepay in July, later July, for consideration and subsequent adoption, if you agree. That, of course, will be discussed with the Utility Advisory Board. A meeting's been scheduled to discuss that with them on July 8th, so they can provide you their feedback as a citizen group. South of us, Keys and Key West, they're proposed, they're going to resume their cuts on August 1, and they're talking about a 12-month plan for customers to repay their outstanding balances, and the late fees are going to begin July 1 again. And of course, Fort Pierce, just like that's north of us, we have not seen a date yet for when they resume their service disconnects, but they have talked about a 12-month repayment plan and late fees resuming on July 1. A lot of data for you to consider. So that's where we are on the background to help you in your deliberations tonight, and ultimately a discussion. What we're what we're asking for tonight, and we put out there as a straw man, is to resume our service disconnects on July 17th. That gives customers approximately 28 days to get begin making their payments. We are proposing that we create a payment plan. Now, the last thing that we want to do, and this would be a heavy day on one's heart, would be to have to go back to that list of 1,789 and execute 1,789 cuts on July 17th. We don't want to do that. We would like to see customers get caught up, go on payment plans. it would be a physical challenge just to disconnect that many people in one day. So we would propose that the service disconnects begin on the 17th for delinquent accounts, but that it be in order of their meter read cycle. There's approximately 21 meter read cycles in a month. So the disconnects would happen in order of meter read cycle. So that spaces everything out for logistic purposes, but we would begin that on July 17th with whatever cycle is read that day. We do envision or propose that there be a payment plan, and our thoughts on how the payment plan would work is that you take the
Can we
number.
move out of the screen, Ed? I'm sorry. Can we check
I'm
this?
sorry.
Can we move out of the presentation screen, or are you still having more pages? Thank you.
There we go.
All right.
Good suggestion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry about that.
We would propose that the payment plans allow customers to take the total amount that they owe us, which would include both the delinquent amount and the late amounts, that total amount, and divide that in equal amounts over the payment period. So if you pick a payment period of 12 months or 6 months, whatever it is, we take that outstanding amount. Let's pick an easy number. Let's say it's $120. Divide that by 12, that's $10 a month. So the customer would pay $10 per month over the next 12 months, plus their current month's electric bill as it comes up. So that would give customers the ability to really take that liability, that amount that was deferred, and spread it out over some period of time. Now, I use 12 months as my example for speaking purposes. You as a group should give us that direction on what you suggest that would be. In order to do this, we would also suggest that the bill reviews that we do for the purpose of resetting people's deposits, that continue to be suspended through the end of the year, the end of the fiscal year. That will allow customers to not be in a position where they've had a number of late payments or they've been subject to a disconnect to suddenly have to be faced with an even higher deposit requirement, which would be punitive. We're not trying to hurt people. So we would propose that we just cease that process through the end of the fiscal year. What we would also do is propose that when we do resume, that we not take what happened to them during the period of suspension and have that count against them. So we wouldn't want to say on October 1, oh, you were late more than 4 times, now your deposit's going up, right? We would like that period of time to be, I don't know if you want to call it quarantined or waived, and say, let it go. And we just begin with a new slate and not hold them accountable for that. It just seems like it would be very harsh to say, those 4 times you didn't pay during the moratorium, now they count against you, we're going to raise your deposit. So we want to give customers the ability to get caught up and be humanistic about this and realistic, and saying, we're a compassionate city, and let's help our customers get back on their feet, more so than an investor-owned utility might, for example. We are citizen-owned here. That's our suggestion as staff.
Okay, I see lots of hands up, so let's go in the order they were received. Commissioner Hardy, you're first, followed by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, and then the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Touched on in the last presentation how potential evictions could affect our ability to know who needs what where with respect to access to internet. And I'm wondering how potential evictions after July 1st, when writs of possession will be available, and after July 2nd, when the governor's moratorium basically comes off, how do you think that might affect our ability to collect on some of these accounts over a period of time?
Madam Mayor, if I may address the question.
Yes, please. Sorry, I muted.
In our normal process, what would happen is if a customer were evicted, the account would be finalized. Any deposit that is in our accounts on behalf of that account would be applied to their outstanding balance. If there's any balance remaining after that, that would be the responsibility of the account holder to pay. Now, if they've been evicted, we don't know where they'll be. It would be held against them, or they'd have to pay it if they attempted to open another account in our electric utility or water utility service territory. But otherwise, it would be gone. If it's a residential tenant, if the name is in the account of the property owner, then the property owner, of course, would retain the liability for that.
Right. And where I'm going with that is, if someone gets evicted and they move somewhere outside of the city, seemingly we're screwed from a revenue collection standpoint, because they really have no incentive to pay us. And from, so that's kind of one aspect. But if they get evicted and they move somewhere within the city and they need to open up a utility account at that address, or, just move, their account over. I'm sorry, is everything okay over there, Christy?
Yeah, your mic's on, Christy. Thank you.
Okay, all right. But yeah, so if someone moves within the city and they're on a payment plan with us, I just want to make sure, like, their ability to continue, like, to move their account from one address to another address, it's not like they start over and everything that they owe us is due, right?
Madam Mayor, if I may address.
Yes, please. Thank you.
The customer's liability follows them indefinitely. Certainly, if they attempt to open another account in the city, the liability on the previous account is due immediately. If they
even if they were current on the not current on the liability, but if they have a payment plan with us and they're paying, but they get evicted, can they just continue paying the payment plan if they move from one address to another, I guess? And I was looking through that very interesting series of things in the motion, but I just want to make sure that that's possible.
I don't believe it's currently possible, or is possible under our current rules. I think it's a good suggestion. I'd have to take guidance from the commission as a whole to make an adjustment of that type. We do envision coming back to you on items B, C, D, and E at the next meeting in the form of a resolution to codify those, if you will. And if a suggestion like that was of interest to the commission, we could certainly be added at that time. But I'll see council has come back online, so I might defer to council and that might happen.
And look, I speak for one commissioner, that being me. I think it's essential. We had a fair number of evictions. Matt Desmond, the foremost guy on that topic, likes to measure it as a percentage of households, or as a percentage of as a percentage of households. We had a fair number of that, right? So like in the county, it's us, it's West Palm Beach, it's Riviera Beach, and we're the leaders in the county as far as the number of folks who are being evicted as a percentage of households in the city, right? And so I imagine that problem did not get worse over the last better over the last 4 months. And I imagine, given our population and the lack of access that some folks may have had to, for example, the $1,200 stimulus check, to, for example, unemployment benefits, that problem may be especially acute here. And so I hope that we can take that into account, that if someone has to move, and as long as they're paying us on the payment plan that they've arranged, right, that we just honor the fact that they're paying us and don't all of a sudden make it due because, for some reason they moved from one apartment to another apartment within the city. I think that's essential. I don't know how my colleagues feel about that, but I think that's absolutely essential.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions. Of the folks who are behind in the bills, I don't want to get into 30 days or 60 days or anything like that. How many of these customers became delinquent after the city announced it was not going to turn off anybody's account?
Madam Mayor, if I may address the question,
Yes, please.
that the exact number, but it's almost the entire 1,789 customers, because we were prior to the disconnect process being halted, we were disconnecting, unfortunately, about 27 customers per day. And that was happening, relatively quickly. We weren't waiting to do that. We had to act. So the most it would have been on the disconnect list at any time might have been 27 plus, or I don't remember seeing a day of more than 30, 40, 50 a day type of thing on a big day.
Okay.
That's what.
The other thing is, in the previous, the presentation you gave last, not tonight, you mentioned that basically, even though there was a very robust outreach program to talk with the folks and find out, give them advice or direction or whatever as far as assistance and that type of stuff. My question to you is, how do you plan going forward to establish a payment program? Because obviously there's a subset of folks out there that you weren't able to reach to begin with. So how are we going to deal with that subset when we come up with a policy that says, this is 6 months, 12 months, whatever the heck it is, to pay it back? What's the plan for that?
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
So we're going to advertise the heck out of this. We would prefer that customers call us in advance of the 17th of July and voluntarily in this grouping, and that they voluntarily go on to the payment plan. I mean, that they be proactive about it. Unfortunately, what we suspect will happen is many won't do it until they're disconnected. Some may pay their bill entirely, because our assumption is that there's some folks in that group that can pay and haven't, but there's a segment that hasn't been able to pay because they haven't had the cash, the money to do it, the funds in their accounts to do it. So we hope that they call us in advance and start the payment plan. Worst case, absolute worst case, is they don't reach out to us at all. They get to the cut date, they get their meter cycle is due, and they get cut. Then they call us to make payment arrangements, and at that point, we put them on the payment plan.
So
we would prefer to do it in advance, so we don't have a whole rush of people waiting to talk to the customer service rep to get on the plan to then go turn the power back on at their place of residence or business.
So in spite of our best efforts to date to outreach to folks and the outreach that you anticipate going forward, what I think I'm hearing you say is, if it is necessary to cut people off, then they decide to show up, we're still going to extend them a payment plan?
Yes, sir.
Huh. Okay. Have you considered, once the commission crafts the policy on the repayment plan, have you considered putting a standard form in the utility bills that outlines the repayment plan process and give them an opportunity to essentially fill it out and bring it in to make it a lot easier for folks to participate? And of course, one of the things I'll propose to the commission is that we give folks an option, maybe 3 options as far as time to pay it back. I mean, some people are capable to pay it back in 3 months. Some people might be able to pay it back in 6 months. Others might need 12 months, for example. But give them the flexibility, to make a repayment plan. Has that been considered?
It's been considered lightly, recognizing that each one of these payment plans requires us to go into the system and modify each and every account to accommodate a payment plan. So we'd rather have kind of a fixed payment plan rather than have customized payment plans for each individual customer.
Okay. Well, then
what I also want to do is I don't want to put staff in a position of having to make judgment calls over who can pay what. and put us in, we're not equipped to do that. And
No. I'm putting the burden on the customer for them to determine, what payment plan works best for them, 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. Well, I'm just picking those numbers.
But if I may, in terms of notifying the customers, what we're doing now is when a customer gets to the late point, as an example, they get instead of the yellow notice, I believe they're getting a notice that refers them to an agency, provides them with the agency information. So we could replace that with information on the payment plan. And
I'm just trying to figure out a way to facilitate and expedite the communication and the feedback to the utility department, so we know where each account ultimately stands, and so we can project into the future what to anticipate. I mean, you've got 1,700 or so accounts that are out that are delinquent now. Well, if we wake up in 3 months and realize, well, gee, we've got 800 of these folks have made no attempt to reach out to us, then that's going to, there's a fiscal impact that to be considered and other things that we got to decide. So I'm just wondering if it might be better for us to, find a way to facilitate and expedite a payment plan in such a way that we have it in writing, if you will, at their own hand, that they voluntarily provide. The other question I'm going to offer too is, and this is, I guess, I'll probably offer this when we have to deliberate on what to do ultimately, is maybe, I mean, we know there's going to be a certain number of people at the end of the day that ultimately will not pay. I think it's foolhardy for us to think that all 1,700 people are going to pay their bill. With the evictions and all the other things that are going on in the world, I just don't think that's practical. So my question is it possible, and this is, I'm asking of the 5 of my colleagues, and I don't really, or about 4 colleagues, I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but something to think about. Maybe structure a blended repayment plan that includes like a 10% forgiveness of the bill on the residential side as an incentive to, come to the table, and self-identify or whatever. We got to do something because, again, given the language barriers, given the technology barriers, given all the barriers that we're faced with in this city, we know there's going to be a lot of folks who are going to fall through the cracks or just not going to show up, to work through this. So I'm just trying to think of some creative ways to minimize the exposure that ultimately we're going to face. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next, Vice Mayor.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. So Ed, did you say anything about looking at any kind of waiver of deposits or anything of lowering deposits for new residents and or new businesses coming to Lake Worth Beach? Was there any consideration for, say, new people moving to Lake Worth or people being evicted and having to move into a new place, lowering those deposits? Same thing with commercial customers, that might be a burden to attract new businesses.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
I think the Vice Mayor is leading the witness here. We haven't talked, but we have looked back at options that we have to do that, and we've resurrected for discussion in staff and with the vendor the prepay concept, and we decided not to rush it forward to this meeting or to this month until we could rethink it, go back over previous concerns, run it through the current utility advisory board, and then bring it to this body later in July, at the July 28 meeting, I believe, as a presentation. We do envision, the draft that's running around in my head has not been set to paper yet, but what I've been talking with my staff about is a concept by which we would allow incoming customers, particularly residential customers, the option to put up zero deposit, no deposit whatsoever, and go on to a prepay instead. what we think that would do is it relieves the financial burden on the incoming customer. It also relieves the financial risk on the city of default, because the customer would be on a prepay, and they would fund their prepay account and have to keep their prepay account so that they wouldn't run out. That would be in lieu of having deposits.
Okay, and I'm comfortable with a prepaid system, but I kind of think all this works together because we're looking to put them on payment plans. I think if we're talking to people about a payment plan, we should be talking to them about a prepay system at the same time. Because there's a cost of doing business. If our employees are making 2, 3, 4 calls, just like Commissioner Maxwell was referring to, we were going out to them, offering them, assistance through the county. We could have also been talking to them about a prepaid system and or a payment option. Now there is a cost of doing business. So, if we are waiting for these people and their power's turned off, are we charging them for reconnects? Are we, waiving those things? Because that is that physically people are, in some cases, a lot of it's remote now, but there's a cost of doing business. How are we recovering from those costs?
Well, these 1,789 obviously have not been disconnected, so there's not going to be any late fees or any reconnect fees because they weren't disconnected, so there's no fees for them. Going forward on a prepay, if we had a prepay system, the suggestion would be to make it minimal because we want to encourage people to go onto the prepay. What we did think about, Vice Mayor, is the concept of we're right now going to shake down, if you will, the prepay app to make sure that it works properly. So we're going to get some folks to volunteer to go on a prepay as a test, just as a beta test internally to make sure it works correctly. One concept that I floated for internal discussion with staff as a concept would be to say to an existing customer, for example, if they're on a payment plan, would be to convert to prepay, come off of the payment plan and convert to prepay. That's an option that we could add later on. My concern in offering the prepay right away would be that if the system doesn't work properly, we've created a bigger mess.
Well, how soon will we know that? Because again, going back to a payment plan or a prepay, it's more economical for a new business or a new homeowner to go on a prepay because the deposits aren't there. So, how soon will we have that information in? And because we're looking at 30 days here to put somebody on a payment plan and get them to pay back. Can we say that the prepay and the payment plan can both be up within 30 days or no?
No, probably not. I would not want to mislead you and think that we could get prepay up and running within 30 days. We'd like a little bit more time to get the prepay going. So our suggestion would be to have people start on the payment plan. And then once we're 100% sure that prepay is good to go, and assuming, of course, that this body were to approve it, and all of the changes that would go along with the resolution on rates and deposits. And
okay. Well, I totally agree with you. We don't want to push something out that's not ready, but we're looking at, July 1st and July 2nd for the governors. He may or may not extend that. I doubt he will, but these are when we're going to look at people being evicted and things happening. And, it would be great if everything could work together. The other question, you had referred to a motion. We have no motion in our paper backups. Did the staff have a recommendation? It might be online, but.
There is in the document for tonight is the draft language.
The staff report has a motion, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Okay, I just received that. That was not in my original backup.
Me too.
Well, that was in the backup, which was released on Thursday or Friday of last week, I believe.
Okay, that was not in my paper backup. Okay.
It's online.
It's online, yeah. Okay.
And you'll note that we did not fill in the blanks on the number of months over which the payment plan would occur. We look for guidance from this body for that.
Well, based on some of our conversations before and now, you know, I'm comfortable with 12 months for residential and 36 months for commercial.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Do we have public comment on this tonight?
Sorry, I had my hand up.
No,
for
I'm coming. I'm coming to you next. I said, I just wanted to ask, do we do public comment on this? City Clerk, do we have it?
Yes, Madam Mayor, there are 2 comments that have been submitted.
Okay, hold on. Commissioner Robinson's had his hand up, and then I have a question too, because I get to ask questions too, you know.
Thank you. I was just wondering what, that you have the difference of 975 delinquent and you said delinquent and late. Isn't that the same thing? Or not?
Madam Mayor, if I may, yeah, they're slightly different. Late account is not yet considered delinquent. So if I got this correctly, I'm going to reach out to my lifeline. Franco, jump in if you're out there and I get this wrong. The past due amounts are just past due. They haven't crossed into delinquency yet. So that's why there's a differentiation there.
Okay, so and then so the money deposit that would cover it versus the 602 that the deposit does cover that. What kind of money are we talking there? Yeah, you get my question?
Yes, I'm looking at the, Franco, are you there? As I look at the data, so the 602 is a balance due after the deposit is applied. And I believe that would be that's covered in the $722,000, but I have to ask Franco to weigh in with that and give a better.
If you can put the slide back up just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Which one is that? And
Go backwards, Ed. From your last page.
while we're waiting for this, Franco, I just wanted to commend all the service department, the utility department for reaching out and trying to be as compassionate as possible to all our customers. We're not going to talk about deposits tonight at all. Is that correct, or any changes? Are we still under this resolution from 2013?
Ed?
Yes, we are. I'm not sure I'm able to get my screen up properly. I'm not.
It's okay.
All right.
But yes, this is still an operable resolution. This is the one that governs the work that we do every day.
Well, and I did read in there that part of their service was to consult on deposits as well. I know you said that they're talking about rates, but somewhere in there, the resolution, I read, that they were consulting on deposits as well. Is that?
I understand.
Well, in the resolution that we're paying for, and we're still paying them, right? On whereas, in the second paragraph, city entered into a contract online information services to assist city determining the appropriate residential deposit.
Oh, okay. All right. I understand now, sir.
And on the applicant's credit history and other factors, are we still abiding by this resolution with online?
Yes. Anytime a customer applies to be a customer of ours, this external agency runs a credit background or credit check and then advises us on the level of deposit which is required of the customer. This is new customers, existing customers. they advise us on the level of deposit that's required from that particular customer.
So we totally rely on their, and I'm going to say subjectivity on what they're recommending for a deposit on each customer?
On new accounts, yes.
On each one individually, based on their credit?
Correct, in accordance with what the resolution says. That's what's being done for a long time. We pay an annual fee. There's a service per account, I believe, that they evaluate, and they make a recommendation on what that deposit should be. And
okay. Well, and are we really dealing with deposit conversation tonight or not? Because I'm really I don't want to get into it, but I guess we're going to get into it on the 28th. Is that correct?
The discussion on July 28th, which we envision is one around the use of the prepay product, the prepay app by Acceleron, and how that might be able to be used to take the place of having a deposit from a new residential customer. At that time, you would also, have a recommendation, I assume, from the advisory board, because we're gonna give the advisory board a presentation on that on July 8th, so that they can, give you.
All right. So, well, I online then considers other factors, and I just that brings to mind subjective decisions if it's not based on how the deposits there has to be consequences for not paying. I understand that, and I'm glad. The other question was for prepay, and I spoke about the legality of our deposit system being only prepay, not an option. And we're going to find out whether that will be legal to have that as one of our options for deposits.
Madam Mayor, if I may, yes.
Yes, please.
We would vet the prepay system as to its legality. I believe it is legal because it's being used in a number of other cities and many utilities across the country. I think the question would be, would it be legal to make that the only way that one could sign up for utility service would be using prepay? We'd have to check to see.
That's the question. To
see if we would, for example, we haven't even put pen to paper on these concepts yet, but it would be to take a look at, do we have an either or? For example, one option could be that just like renting in a home or an apartment, you put up security regardless of what your credit is. It's 2 months, right? Something like that. Check whatsoever. Or go on prepay, one or the other. That would allow us to say credit is not a discussion at all. It doesn't matter whether your credit is fantastic, your credit is poor. You would have the option of either paying 2 months, and I'm just brainstorming here, a fixed amount, or going on the prepay and having no deposit whatsoever.
I'm asking that on the 28th, will we have that option of prepay only? Do you think we can get an answer from somebody, whoever has to answer that? If we can legally have that as an option on the 28th.
I'm going to look to council for a lifeline on this one.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, City Attorney, chime in, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson, we will certainly look at that. Obviously, from a legal standpoint, having options is better. My initial look at it without doing any research is that there's very little regulations of a municipal owned utility that would, I think, prevent us from having that as our only option. But I think Ed's correct in that it probably is better to have more than one option of how we deal with deposits or what we require in order to hook up to the city system to ensure that we receive the correct payment. But we will certainly look at that, and I'll be have some legal research to be able to respond to the issue that comes up July 28th.
Well, in my mind, it sounds like a much more fair consequence, ability for us to have a consequence for non-payment, rather than a varied, a whole list of options on how we're going to collect a deposit.
And Madam Mayor, I saw that Franco chimed in for a second because I think Franco knows more specifics about what the outside agency actually looks at in determining what the deposits is, so as to rule out subjectivity in that determination.
Well, I saw criminal record. I just question that in terms of what that has to do with a payment of a utility bill.
Nico, you there?
And
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Mayor, if I may. Commissioner Robinson, the way the system works is it just reports back a red, yellow, green. So if a customer applies for new service, the customer service representative will ask if they would like their credit to be run. We run it through the online utility exchange system, and all the representative sees is either red, yellow, green. And what that means is if it comes back green, then we waive the deposit requirement. The deposit requirement is part of the ordinance, or excuse me, the resolution 70-2013, which will be coming up for modification the end of June at the next electric utility meeting. But you know, there's a requirement of 2.5 times the average consumption on the service address. That is what's in the resolution right now. So when it comes back green, it's either waived. If it comes back yellow, it can be reduced. If it comes back red, then it would be the maximum required deposit for that service address. I hope that clarifies your question.
it does, and there's a charge to going on the prepay, right? Or not?
Well, we're still in discussions with a vendor and we haven't formulated all the business rules, but yeah, that's why Ed is asking for some time to put all the business rules in place, to beta test the system before we launch it.
And I'm going to ask about debtor's prison in terms of the ability to pay. We make it much more onerous for somebody that's struggling, you know, to pay versus somebody that has excellent credit. I understand the difference, but we're looking for fairness as much as possible and the ability to pay what their bill is. And if I just would like to not smack the person that is struggling as much as we do. What's the shut-off period on, if we are talking about July 17th? They haven't paid. They apparently, are we going to have extra staff on the 17th? Or are we going to then turn off their electricity on the 17th, 18th? You know, what can we expect? What can the citizens expect on the 18th if they don't pay?
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please. I'm blurry. You can't see me.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
What we envision on the 18th, as your example, is that not all 1,700 customers would be cut. The only customers that would be cut that day would be the ones that have not gone on a payment plan and their meter read cycle is that day.
Right.
So and remember, you could, if you want to do round numbers, you could take the 1,780 and whatever it is, let's say 1,700, and divide that by 21 cycles because there's 21 cycles.
Got that. But they know they're going to be shut off.
They would know that they're going to be shut off. Yes, they would. We don't want to sneak up on them. We're going to advertise the heck out of it. We don't want to sneak up on anybody. Now, if you know, what's the normal shut off period of being late or delinquent, whatever you want to call it? Franco, can you answer that?
Yep, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Currently, Commissioner Robinson, it's on day 42. It is one of the most generous cycles or timelines compared to other municipalities, compared to FPL, right? They're at 31 days and then you get disconnected. So the city of Lake Worth Beach is being very compassionate with our customers, and we're trying to do everything possible to work with them. Now, one of the things that I think it was Vice Mayor Maxwell had questioned as far as communication. Once the staff report is approved by City Council and a date is put in and made effective, let's say it is July 17th, we plan on mailing yellow notices to all 1,700 customers to get their attention, to get them to reach out to us by email, by phone, however possible, so we can get them set up during this 30-day time period before we start resuming disconnects on the 17th. And so on the 17th, as Ed mentioned, it'll be 21 cycles, so 1,700 will be about almost 100 a day is the way the rotation is going to work. So we're not going to do all 1,700 on the 17th. They'll have time to reach out to us to establish a payment plan, and we're going to work with them within the boundaries that you give us, that you approve tonight.
Good. Thank you.
And if I could add a little bit more to that. So
Okay.
about prepay and the philosophy that, how we're wired here is to greatly improve the customer experience. So we're talking about this obviously from a negative point of view, right? And saying, how do we get our money back? But we're looking at this also from the standpoint of what's good for our customers. So if you look at the things that we've done to greatly improve the hours of the day and days of the week during when customers can make payments, greatly improve the number of places where they can make payments, greatly improve or eliminate the need for them to come to our offices during business hours to produce their lease, to open a new account. So let's all think back to the days when we were younger and we were renting our first apartments or our first homes. We got all of our buddies, friends and girlfriends, other couples. We had all our stuff in the truck. We ordered a lot of pizzas and we're going to move in. And I get to the door and I find out that the power's out. I didn't plan on that. And then I have to go down to City Hall or just the City Annex building to fill out the applications and then call my landlord in a hurry to get the copy of the lease. All while my friends, I'm just drawing a picture, are waiting in the driveway to start unloading the truck, right? And I'm running back and forth and I find out at the same time that I have to put up a $500 deposit. I don't have the $500. I just paid my deposit for my apartment. And I just paid for all the pizza and I paid for the U-Haul truck and I got all my buddies that took a day off from work. I've got kids or what. You can imagine what that day is like. We've all been through this, right? At some point in our lives. The concept of prepay is don't worry about the deposit. You don't have to come to the office. Just sign up for prepay. We'll activate the meter remotely. You don't have to wait for us to come out and do it. We're going to flip a switch with mouse clicks. That's the concept, to greatly improve that experience, make it easier for that person to come into town, and at the same time, make it easier for them to remain current. We're not asking to go into their pocket, take more deposit. You're on prepay. It's all done remotely. Send us a copy of the list in an email, of your lease in an email. It's that simple. You don't have to wait for us to run your credit. We don't care what your credit is. You just go on prepay and it's done. So we're looking at it from the standpoint of also improving that customer experience. At the moment, obviously we have to talk about it because it's an option for how to get this balance paid off. But this moment will pass. And we want to be viewed as the utility and the city that's doing the right things to make it easier to move into town, make it easier to stay here, and make it easier to be a part of our community. Not build these barriers that require you to take days off from work, produce yourself in person, come all the way down to the one office during only business hours, things like that. Just eliminate all those barriers and make it much easier. And today's customer is a customer that, they do everything on this phone, right? Whether it's ordering for dinner or groceries to be delivered to their house, to set up an account, to pay their medical bills, and everything's by phone. Even humongous gas and electric and around the corner is doing everything with apps. And that's where we're going. Make it easier for the customer. So that's my little pitch for what we have coming.
Mayor, I had one more question, and I'm all about making it easier and simpler. The in-kind services we talked about earlier, that's on your ticket or?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I can address that. Yes, the in-kind services are a combination of what we would have charged a commercial entity to attach to a pole. And we're not saying that we should charge this group for that, but we're saying that's the value of that service. That's approximately $285,000 to $300,000 a year is what we would have charged another entity just for the wireless attachments. The electricity is $5,000 a year, and these numbers are in perpetuity. These pole attachment rates, by the way, not a one-time fee. It's a annual fee in perpetuity we would charge. So if a private entity were asked to connect the put wireless radios up on 225 poles, that'd be about almost $300,000 a year in annual fees. And then in addition to that, there's the cost of extending the electric lines over to supply the radio. So that's the in-kind service. And please don't take that as an argument that says we shouldn't do it. That's the value of what we're providing. And those rates have recently been tested. They've been benchmarked and developed based on statewide and national numbers. And the law firm of Torsivia has been very actively involved with us. And we've negotiated contracts. We have examples of firms that are currently paying us those amounts.
I just want to do everything we can afford to do for education. But when we're dealing with people's budgets that are much larger than ours, and we're doing in-kind services, I would like to be generous, but if there's any way that we can get some cash for your operation, I'd like to look at it.
Well, thank you very much on behalf of the citizens for that. But please don't take my comments to mean that the city should not make that in-kind contribution. That is
My comments.
And it's the commercial value of that service. That's all it is. It's a benchmark.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Maxwell. You're muted.
All right, who's laughing at me? Ed? That's not funny.
Sorry.
I wanted
She's
to,
making me laugh all day.
I just wanted to comment a little bit of background information on Franco's online resources. This is a fair way of doing this. That organization, Online Information Services, has essentially a direct link to every utility in the United States. They know in real time if anybody has skipped out on the bill. And that's the beauty of using them as a service. Because when sometimes people don't pay their bill and they scoot across the line to the next city and they establish utility services. So it's a huge benefit to us. It is certainly a fair system because, as Franco mentioned, we don't get into their background. We get a color coding. That's all.
Divorces can be expensive.
Based on color coding based on algorithms. Okay. And I believe the deposit system is necessary. And yes, it on its face, it looks like, and it feels like, gee, so folks that don't have good credit or whatever are paying higher fees or whatever. And that's absolutely correct. And on its face, it seems like that's not fair. But what other system is there to compensate for folks who don't pay their bills? Does that mean that you pass the cost on to the folks that do pay their bills?
Prepay system.
Okay, so anyway, on that point, the other point, Madam Mayor, I think Ed was talking about volunteers or guinea pigs to go on the prepay. I think I'll volunteer my family to do it, and I would challenge the other 4 commissioners to do the same.
I'm in.
That's it.
All right, Commissioner Hardy. You're muted.
On what other systems exist to make sure that we're compensated for folks who have skipped out on their bill or who may be a bad credit, I think a prepay system would be that system because you're asking for the money up front as opposed to after the service has been provided. And I think we probably should have passed that when it was first presented to the commission. I think that was back in early 2017. And so I look forward to having an opportunity to vote on that this time. If it's brought to us again, I think it's a good idea. It's a way of reducing our credit risk to people, while at the same time lowering the cost of opening up an account and all of that stuff with us. And remember, there was some controversy about us retroactively adjusting people's deposit. I think that has an opportunity to address that issue as well. So I look forward to being able to vote in the affirmative for that. The other thing is the motion, so I'll call it that was made doesn't necessarily address all the things in the staff report. So would the clerk mind
I thought
reading?
the motion was to approve all of the items, and then he filled in the blanks for item C. That's what I interpreted as.
I didn't hear that when he said it. Madam Clerk?
Madam Clerk? You're on mute.
I just heard him say it was for
Yes.
12 months and for the resumption of the disconnects. But if could you recount the order? Excuse me, the motion that was made?
No, because I didn't get it, but I can let you know the 5 things that were in the staff report regarding the motion.
Okay.
What else is in there that you need clarity on? I'll be happy to do it as the maker of the motion.
There's 5 items. I was under the impression that you approved the motion as it stood in the agenda, which is why we were asking. We didn't have the backup for the agenda, so we just got that, I guess, now. So I assumed that you were following the motion that was all there, and when you gave those 2 items of months, they were the only thing that needed to be filled in on that, and that was item C.
That's how I understood it. Is there something else that needs to be filled in that I did not see?
Okay, well, I didn't hear that when the motion was made. I heard those 2 things specifically addressed. So
I thought those were the only 2 things to be filled in. Like I said, we just received this, so
there were multiple. Okay, we're not going to get into that. Okay, so I'm glad that all the items in the staff report are accounted for in the motion, or at least we understand it that way. So a concern that I have, and we've discussed the ability to collect when folks get evicted. I want to make sure, and this was not a part of the staff report, but this absolutely needs to be a part of it. If someone gets evicted, but they either didn't get a chance to get on a payment plan with us for a utility debt because they were evicted before they could consummate that kind of arrangement with us, or if they were evicted after having established a payment plan with us and they're good on it, or it hasn't even been time for them to start it. I want to make sure that the payment plan is portable within the city. If someone has to move because so that's not in the staff report, which means it's not in the motion. Can we add that to this motion that has been seconded?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand. So does that mean, has this come to you before? Do you know a lot of people that have had this happen?
Okay, so the governor's moratorium is going to expire on the 2nd. Even before the governor's moratorium expires, writs of possession.
The rent moratorium, I'm sorry, just catch me up.
Yeah, so the governor put in place a moratorium.
Right.
The moratorium was very specific. There was a moratorium on evictions if you had a COVID-19 related financial hardship. In addition to that, the Supreme Court said nobody's getting any writs of possession, which is a separate thing. So even if like the eviction's been processed, like you can't get a writ of possession, you can't take your apartment back, right? Okay, so regardless of whether the governor extends his moratorium, some folks in this state, and I imagine we'll get our share in this city, are going to have writs of possession issued for their apartment, and they're going to have to vacate within a certain number of days. Okay.
Now I'm following.
And right, and this may happen before the 17th, when, according to this motion, the cutoffs will resume, and by which most folks need to have gotten an arrangement with us, right? So someone gets a, let's say, judge issues a writ of possession on July 2nd for some landlord's apartment. The person has to vacate within, certainly before the 17th. And now they're out. They haven't had a chance to get with us to get a payment plan arranged, or maybe they did, right? But under our current policies, even if they move somewhere within the city, let's say they move to the fourplex next door, that back amount is now due up front. And the payment plan, if they consummated it, isn't portable. And if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to get one. I just want to make sure that that is added to what we're approving tonight. And I'm wondering if we can add that to the motion. So that would be an issue for the maker of the motion to consider.
Okay, no, I now I get it. I haven't asked any questions, and I know you guys have had 1 and 2 chances, some of you. It relates to you, this question that you're asking, and then we can kind of maybe talk about it. Sure. I wanted to just ask Ed. Ed, can you hear me? Is the 17th, why you chose the 17th, is that the date for all, is that the billing cycle for everyone, or is that kind of like a fiscal year in the utility world, the 17th?
No, it's not related to that at all. I can share with you, Madam Mayor, how we came up with the 17th. It was out of a desire to have a 30-day notice or 30-day runway, if you would, for customers to know that we were going to resume.
From today till on. I was thinking about the possibility of starting on the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. We originally thought this meeting was going to happen on Tuesday, the 16th. So it was 30 days from then. So it works out to be, I guess, 28 days from today, because the meeting got moved a couple of days for the subject. But it was to give customers an adequate runway, if you will, to get ready.
Okay. All right, good. Then the question I have is that I was thinking if, and I didn't know, because I know that we follow FP&L's kind of lead on it and who's around us. I was happy to see the chart to show where we ended up there in the group of municipal owned electric utilities, as well as our peer. And I'm proud of that. So thank you for sharing that. What I was thinking is it easier to wait until the start of the first of the following month so that people will know if they've been notified, of eviction or whatever, would have more time to have that ability to do it? To extend the process to the first is what I'm asking you. A monthly, as opposed to the 17th of what we're saying, July 17th, as opposed to doing that August 1st.
Right.
As opposed to giving all these other extensions and changing and having a sliding scale here and a move that there and something there, is giving that extra time based on when the government's going to stop paying paychecks or stop paying these things, is giving it extra time beneficial. That's just something I wanted to open up to my fellow commissioners as well, if we extend that period. Well, Commissioner Hardy, go ahead.
Yeah, so and I had other questions, but I certainly welcome extending the moratorium to the first. I think that's a good thing. Unemployment claims are still unbelievably high by any objective. They're 5 times as high as they were before COVID-19. And so I certainly support that. But the underlying problem of the portability of any payment plan is not addressed by moving the moratorium to August 1st. Right. So someone gets folks are going to get evicted before August 1st and after August 1st. And if they're evicted, or even if they just move because their lease is up, right? Maybe someone has a baby and they move to a larger apartment, or a child goes and becomes an adult, so they move to a small apartment, or their lease expires and the landlord wants to sell the property and bulldoze it or whatever, right? So if someone has to move for whatever reason, under our current, what Ed said earlier is that payment plan isn't portable. So you can move the shutoff date to whenever, but once those shutoffs resume eventually, we still, I think, would want that payment plan to be portable so that folks can have mobility throughout the city, whether that mobility is forced or of their own choice, as long as they're paying us. So I think, you know, I would like to see that added to the motion that has been made, and I'm wondering if the maker of the motion would add that to his motion.
I'm not sure. Now, I got all hands up all around here, so, you know, you want
Andy?
Ed?
Well, Andy has he can decide, he can tell us right now if he would.
Well, actually, we usually don't go back and forth. We let everyone talk one at a time. It's not usually, it's more of a everyone at a time with staff.
I'm basically asking for a friendly amendment, and the only person who can answer whether that's a friendly amendment or not is the person who made the motion.
Right. Well, Andy?
He was muted.
Oh, is it? No, I'm not muted. My hand's been up for a while. Is it my turn?
I think so. I don't know. I have these little cards here, just so you all see that Sylvina gives me these cards, and I try to be really fair in the order in which they're received, just so you all know.
Commissioner Hardy asked you whether it would move with the resident, and your answer was yes, correct?
Let me clarify. We currently don't do that, but that could certainly be accommodated if this body were to agree to that change.
Okay, I have no problem amending my motion to include that, and also moving it to August 1st if the second was interested in that.
And we didn't even get the financial repercussions of doing that too. So, and you know, you factor this in, and we're seeing we already lost 1-something million. I mean, I want to make sure that if we're discussing this before we're finalizing motions, I want to make sure all of you, again, have had a chance to weigh in, and Ed could tell us what the financial repercussions of that are as well. And this, the person who made the second, so Commissioner Maxwell.
I think that extending the moratorium to the first only aggravates the problem of portability, because it takes about 30 days on a good day to evict somebody from their unit. You're not going to evict anybody much sooner than 30 days. Just can't get through the court process. You can't get everybody served. You can't get it. Just can't be done unless you've got 30 days is about as fast as you can do it. So,
point of information.
Sure, why not?
There's an attorney who works for us, and we're not talking about new eviction filings. Let's say the writs of possession, which is totally separate from the governor's order. How many days, you know, when a landlord gets a writs of possession, and there are a bunch of cases that have been judged, but a writ, you know, like a writ hasn't been issued. When a landlord gets a writ of possession, how long does the person have to vacate? Do we know?
Quickly.
Madam Mayor. I'm assuming you said okay.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Okay. It really depends because it depends on how backed up the court system is and how backed up the PBSO is, because they have authority to issue all writs of possession within Palm Beach County.
But I mean, like when a writ of possession is issued.
Ideally, it's executed within 24 hours, but again, it really just depends, because sometimes what happens is a writ doesn't have to be issued because they voluntarily vacate. Other times it's a process they have to go through where, for whatever reason, the court doesn't get to it right away.
Sure.
So it's just gonna vary.
Okay, so a writ of possession, if it were issued, is typically 24 hours.
Again, ideally, I've been involved in scenarios where it's not within 24 hours.
Okay. All right. So which speaks to the point that in the days between between July 1st and August 1st, someone could have to vacate their apartment in the city. And if they were to vacate their apartment, they would not have any ability to port that payment plan to another apartment within the city. And if they can't do that, that makes the debt even less collectible because it's all due up front.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Let me ask Christie a question.
You've been in the property management business for a long time, so you.
Well, that's why I'm
dealt
saying
with tenant issues. Yeah.
You can get 30 days is about the best you can expect from start to finish before you can even get your writ of possession. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. Okay. That's the point I'm trying to make. So it's good. And with the court system being backed up, I would dare say it'd probably be closer to 2 months on a good day. So I don't think there's any imminent danger that folks are going to be issued writs of possession by July 17th. That's my.
I'll second Andy's motion. If Maxwell withdraws his second, I will second it. And so there you go.
Okay, so Commissioner, yeah, let's call each other by our commissioner names, shall we? We're getting so friendly here. So Commissioner, Vice Mayor, your motion was what? Now I'm getting confused.
The portability, I support the portability. I
Okay,
am happy with the 17th, but if the commission would like the 1st, I'd be happy to move it to the 1st. So at this
I was kind of an either or when I was suggesting
Okay.
it.
So let's keep the
So-
portability to make sure the portability is there and leave it on the 17th.
And we're still further out than any other utility company in the area.
Would the seconder support that?
Okay, do you support that, Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Madam Mayor, you asked earlier about the fiscal impact. You know,
They were prepared for this impact of the 17th, which is what he moved from the 1st to the 7th, back to the 17th.
there's a part of my brain that says, well, wait a minute. If they were evicted because they couldn't pay their rent, they may have trouble getting another unit, number one. But number two, even if they do get another unit, if they couldn't pay their rent before, what makes us think they're going to pay their utilities?
Madam Mayor?
Madam Mayor,
I think, Vice Mayor, you were first.
The way I look at it with the portability, I understand where the Vice Mayor Pro Temp is going with this, but if a renter gets another unit, our best shot at getting the money out of them is to make this portable. Because if they just leave completely, you know, our best case is that they find another place in Lake Worth Beach.
Fair
And
enough.
it carries
Okay,
on, we give them new power, they're on a payment plan, and they continue to pay the old debt.
All right, so the motion and the second stand, and let's go to public comment before we have 50 more hands up. Public comment, Madam Clerk.
Okay, the first comment is from Ramsey Stevens. She wrote, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, as a member of the Electric Utility Advisory Board, I ask you again to respond to our formal request to discuss opportunities to make our utility more sustainable and to provide economic relief to our community. In light of your discussion regarding the resumption of utility disconnections, it would be a shame if we further delay examining these opportunities. We could potentially be providing economic relief, reducing our carbon footprint, and unlocking new avenues of investment in our utility through the policies we've requested to discuss. More than ever, we need to be doing everything we can to use our utility as an instrument of equitable economic development in our community. The second card is from Cheryl Rashkin, 1302 South Palm Way. Good evening all. Hope all are well and dry on this very soggy Thursday eve. In review of the backup material, it appears the utility fund will be reduced by 15%. Even though a portion of those funds will be recovered, that is still a huge loss to the budget for this fiscal year, as I know that a portion of those funds goes into a reserve account for disaster events, to repair services, and to make necessary improvements to its infrastructure. My questions: do we know how many of these persons that needed this assistance are back to work full-time, part-time? Have they been reaching out to the city staff? So if they need assistance, the city has the insight to know if we should continue with assistance to those already getting it, or additional persons that are now unemployed and still not getting the unemployment dollars they should be getting. I have a few friends in the city that are still not working, have not received any unemployment benefits, and are just running low on funds to maintain their bills. Is there a plan in place for those types of persons in the near future? I also know of a few that have scammed the city's forbearance during COVID-19 to waive fees when not paying their utility bills as a routine practice. Are we doing anything about that? For those neighbors that were helped during this trying time, I wish to extend my thanks to the mayor, commission, and city staff for looking out for the well-being of our residents, even though it caused a funding shortfall. Keep up your kindness and understanding to all of us, your Lake Worth Beach residents, and those that use our utilities and surrounding areas. So end the public comments.
Thank you very much. All right, whose hands are still up? Commissioner Hardy? You have to unmute.
Yep. On the question of what makes a person capable of paying a back due bill on a payment plan if they've been evicted, people who are going to be evicted as a result of COVID-19 and the economic fallout, these are people who had jobs, fell behind on their rent because they couldn't work, because they were fired or furloughed, or their hours were reduced drastically. And during the period of time when they couldn't work, they can't pay their rent. And so you get 1 month back rent. Okay, maybe you can make that up in a month. 2 months, that's extremely difficult for the average person. The average American can't afford a $500 car repair. 3 months, 4 months, paying that back bill is almost impossible to do immediately. And unless your landlord gets you on a payment plan, just as the city would get you on a payment plan, then you're just not going to be able to pay that back and you're going to get evicted. You might be able to pay ongoing because you're back to work or your hours have been restored, but you're not going to be able to pay that back portion. Now, there has been some money available from the county and also from various private organizations, and hopefully folks who need it can access it. One stricture with all of that money is that you have to have documentation, legal citizen or resident status, not just for the head of household or the person whose name is on the lease. I know for the county's CARES fund, you need documentation for every single person in the household. So if you have a head of household who's documented, but you have a wife or a spouse or a brother or whoever who's not documented, you don't qualify, which is extremely, extremely problematic. And so it's that back portion, just like how folks can't pay their back utility bill, they're not going to be able to pay that back rent. I'm glad it's been added to the motion. I'm glad it's been seconded. I'm concerned about the 12-month payback period. What that basically means, given that we've been out basically for about 4 months. Folks basically like people's bills are going to go up by like 25%, right? It's not like we're increasing rates by 25%, right? But a quarter of their annual bill will now be spread out over a 12-month period. And so, you know, I worry about the ability of families to afford that. And I wonder if we might want to spread that out further. I certainly think that might be warranted. But if 12 months is all we can do, I think it's better than not doing anything. And you know, there's a lot of economic pain right now still. 1.5 million people filed initial jobless claims this week alone. I think we're up to 48 million total since the start of this, since March 21st. That's like 10 million more people than filed during the entire Great Recession, which lasted from December 07 to June 09. I don't know how we bounce back this quickly. So I think this is the bare minimum that we can do. I'm glad that we're doing it. I wish there were a way to make it even less difficult for the families that are going to experience this. But if this is what can be done, then it should be done.
I think the one thing that we've had such great, you know, being the county and the state's hometown utility company, honestly, if someone is proactive and approaches us about it and they're going through situations, our staff has always worked one-on-one. We have to have policies in place, you know, so that we can still be a business and keep running. But the great thing about our community is that if you come and say you've got issues, we'll find issues. You know how many times I've reached out to churches in different areas, to, you know, or nonprofit organizations that they're not asking for documentation. You know, the pastors that I know that actually pay out of their own pocket to help members of their churches or just people in their community that aren't even church members pay their bills or their power bills or whatever it may be that these families need. And that's what it means to be a community together, you know, and I'm really proud. I've had a chance to meet a lot of people out in the community over the last several months, over the last several years. I mean, I know some pastors have been doing it for a long time, and it's they're unsung heroes in our community for people, you know, even long before COVID, and it's happening twice as fast and twice as much right now. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our community for doing that. I'm proud of our electric utility for being that. We got kind of a bad rap in the midst of all this stuff, and when I saw those statistics to show how early we were in comparison to the rest of the municipally owned, I'm very proud of that. And I would tell anybody in our community, yeah, we've had this chance. If you have the opportunity and you're back at work and you've got money coming in, you know, we can catch up and do the best that we can on that. But, you know, for all those who need help, call us. We've got a list of numbers of people that can help you. And to Franco and everyone else in our staff that has been calling people up saying, what do you need? What's the situation and how can we help you and how can we direct you? And again, to all the people in the community and the commission that are doing that. So I'm very proud of you guys. We've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Everyone vote? Or are you muted?
Aye,
Okay.
I was muted, but I'm an aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously then. City manager and public, excuse me, look, it says public information. And city utility, honcho guy from the electric. You have any more to add?
No, Madam Mayor, thank you very much for giving us a deep conversation tonight on matters of importance to this community. Thank you.
No, I love it. I love it. Thank you very much and for doing your hard work. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a great night, everyone. God bless.